They made the alien girl eat from the floor, then one human said, "Hold my beer." The cafeteria on Deck 7 smelled like recycled air and bad decisions. Corporal Danny Holt was halfway through a tray of reconstituted noodles when he saw it happen. She was standing near the food station, the alien girl, about 4.5 feet tall, with pale silver-blue skin and large amber eyes that caught the light like a cat's. Her ears were long and narrow, folded slightly at the tips, and she wore the gray uniform of a civilian research assistant. A crescent-shaped badge on her chest read Velhari Xenobiological Division. She was holding a meal tray, and she was looking at a table full of coalition soldiers the way a child looks at a locked door. One of them, a broad-shouldered man named Cole, stood up and walked over to her. He didn't say a word. He just reached out, took her tray from her hands, set it down on the floor, and went back to his seat. The men at the table laughed. One of them filmed it. She looked down at the tray. Then she lowered herself slowly to her knees, folded her legs beneath her, and began to eat from the floor. Her face showed nothing. She had practiced that nothing face for a long time, Danny figured. Danny put down his fork. He had been on this joint station for 6 weeks. The Galactic Coalition facility orbited a dying star at the outer rim of the Karath system, and it was the most politically complicated place Danny had ever been stationed. 32 species lived and worked here. The humans were outnumbered 4-1, and yet somehow certain humans had decided this was a good time to act like they owned the universe. He had seen small things before, a shoulder check in the corridor, a comment about smell or breathing patterns, a junior officer making a Velhari technician redo a perfectly completed calibration report just to watch her do it again. Danny had told himself each time that it wasn't his problem. He had orders. He had a role. He had 12 more months on this posting. He picked up his tray, stood up, and walked to the middle of the cafeteria floor. He set his tray down next to hers. Then he sat cross-legged on the floor, pulled his fork from his pocket, and started eating. The entire cafeteria went quiet. Cole looked over, his face doing a slow, confused shift from amusement to irritation. "What are you doing, Holt?" Danny looked up, chewing. "Eating my noodles. What does it look like?" "Get up. I'm comfortable." A beat of silence. Then a chair scraped back from a table on the other side of the room. Private Llewyn Briggs, Comms Division, walked over and sat down on Danny's left. She didn't say anything. She just pulled out her spoon and started on her soup. Then Sergeant Dale Cooper, who had been reading a datapad in the corner and had witnessed the whole thing, stood up, stretched his back with a crack, and lowered himself to the floor on the alien girl's right side. He nodded to her politely. She blinked at him with those big amber eyes, and something moved in them that wasn't nothing anymore. Cole's jaw tightened. "You're all making a scene." "We're sitting," Llewyn said. "It's pretty low-key, actually." "This is embarrassing." "Yeah," Danny agreed pleasantly. "It is." The alien girl, Velhari, looked from face to face. Her meal tray was still in front of her. Her folded hands were trembling slightly on her knees. She hadn't eaten a bite since she sat down, as if she was waiting to see how this ended before she decided whether it was worth the energy. Danny picked up a noodle, looked at it, and ate it. "These are terrible," he announced to no one in particular, like someone described noodles to a computer that had never seen food. Velhari made a sound. It was small and it happened quickly, and she covered her mouth with 2 fingers, but it was definitely a laugh, or something close enough to one that it counted. Cole stared at them for a long moment. Then he sat back down, said something to the men at his table in a low voice, and they all looked away. The filming stopped. The laughter was gone. The cafeteria noise slowly returned, conversations picking back up, trays sliding, someone dropping a cup on the other side of the room. Normal, ordinary, unremarkable. Velhari reached out and picked up her fork. She held it for a second, looking at it, and then she started eating. Her posture changed, just slightly. The rigid, held-in stillness loosened at the edges, like a fist unclenching one finger at a time. I am called Velhari, she said quietly without looking up. Her voice had a harmonic quality to it, two tones layered one on top of the other, which was how Velhari's speech worked. Third researcher, xenobiology. I have been here 41 days. Danny Holt, Danny said. 43 days, so I've got 2 days of seniority on you. She glanced at him sideways. Does that mean you know where the good food is? Absolutely not. No one knows. I think the good food is a myth. She looked at her tray. This is consistent with that theory. Luan snorted. Dale said nothing, but the corner of his mouth moved. They finished their meals on the floor, all 4 of them, and nobody bothered them again. When Velhari stood to leave, she paused for just a moment and pressed 2 fingers briefly to the center of her chest, a gesture Danny had never seen before. He asked Dale later what it meant. Dale had spent time in Velhari-adjacent sectors and knew some of their customs. It means she's registering you, Dale said. Like saving a contact, but more permanent. Velhari don't have a word for acquaintance. You're either a stranger or you're kept. Danny thought about that for the rest of the day. He had not planned any of it. He had not made a speech or filed a complaint or written a report. He had sat on a floor and eaten bad noodles. It seemed like a small thing. It didn't feel small. That night Cole found him in the corridor outside the bunk quarters and told him he had made things complicated. Danny listened to the whole speech, nodded when Cole was done, and said, "Okay." Then he went to bed. He slept fine. 3 levels up in her small private quarters, Velhari opened her research log and made an entry. She recorded the events of the day in careful, precise language the way she recorded everything. At the end, she paused, then added a note she marked as personal, outside the official record. Today, she wrote, I learned something about humans that the briefings did not cover. She did not explain what it was. She just closed the log and stared at the ceiling for a long time, thinking about a man who had sat on a dirty floor and eaten terrible noodles without being asked. Outside the viewport, the dying star pulsed once, slow and red, and the station drifted on. It started with a datapad. On the morning of Danny's 47th day aboard the station, Velhari appeared at the door of the engineering corridor, where his team was running routine diagnostics on the atmospheric regulators. She was holding a datapad against her chest with both arms, and she looked like someone who had rehearsed what they were going to say and was now regretting the whole plan. Danny looked up from the panel he was calibrating. Hey. I have completed a translation, she said, holding out the datapad. Of the Kareth field emissions you were attempting to analyze last week. Your linguistics database classifies them as signal noise. They are not. They are navigational markers from a pre-collapse civilization. I thought you would want to know. Danny took the datapad and looked at it. The translated data was meticulous, color-coded, and probably represented about 30 hours of work. You did all this on your own. You sat on the floor, she said, as if that explained everything. Apparently it did. He handed it to Dale, who looked at it for 10 seconds and then looked up at Velhari with an expression usually reserved for people who produce miracles without being asked. This is genuinely remarkable. Our whole survey approach has been wrong. Yes, Velhari said. I know. Then she looked uncertain, as if she had not accounted for the possibility that being right might be awkward. I did not mean to say it like that. No, you're correct, Dale said. Completely correct, please don't soften it. She looked relieved. Danny noticed the way she positioned herself in the corridor, always within 1 step of the exit, always angled so she could see the full room. He noticed that she greeted his team members individually and waited for each of them to acknowledge her before continuing, which was, he had learned, a Velhari social custom that communicated basic respect. He also noticed that most of the station's human contingent did not know this and probably interpreted her pauses as hesitation or shyness. He made a note in his own personal log, look up Velhari greeting customs, share with team. Over the next 2 weeks, Velhari began appearing at odd moments. She materialized in the observation lounge while Danny's team was doing star mapping and offered 3 corrections to their coordinates that saved them 4 hours of recalculation. She showed up in the mess hall and sat, this time at a table with Luwen, and the two of them had what appeared to be an intense conversation about signal frequency that ended with Luwen declaring Velhari the most terrifying person she had ever liked. But things were also getting louder in other parts of the station. Cole had not forgotten the cafeteria incident. He had quietly assembled a complaint, not against Danny specifically, but a general one about disruption to social order and preferential treatment of non-human personnel. It was bureaucratic and slippery, the kind of complaint designed to make people tired rather than to win a specific argument. Lieutenant Commander Grace Harmon, who ran the human contingent on Deck 7, called Danny into her office. She was a tall woman with close-cropped brown hair and reading glasses she never seemed to actually look through. She gestured at a chair without looking up from her screen. "Holt, tell me about the cafeteria situation." He told her all of it. She listened with her arms folded, her glasses pushed up on her head. When he finished, she was quiet for a moment. "Cole's complaint claims you created a hostile environment." "For who?" She looked at him over her glasses. "That's what I asked him." Danny waited. He said for the men who were just relaxing. One of those men put a civilian researcher's food tray on the floor and made her eat off the deck. Harmon nodded slowly. "I know what he did. I've reviewed the footage." She took off her glasses entirely and set them down. "Here's my problem, Holt. This station operates on a coalition framework, which means every action has 17 political dimensions and someone is always unhappy with something. My job is to keep the human contingent from giving the other 31 species a reason to write us off as a group. Cole is doing that." "Cole is an idiot," she said evenly. "But he's an idiot with friends who have friends, and you sitting on the floor made the footage." "I know. It's been shared. 42 species, 7 different news channels, 2 independent broadcasts." Danny stared at her. It was a noodle lunch. It was a noodle lunch that 18 million people have now watched. She picked her glasses back up. "Coalition representatives from 5 species have sent formal commendations to me about you, a corporal who sat on a floor." He didn't know what to say to that. Harmon leaned back. "I'm not reprimanding you. I want that on the record. What Cole did was a disgrace and he will be hearing from me separately. But you should understand that you have stepped into something considerably larger than a cafeteria, Corporal, and you should probably decide what you're going to do about that." He left her office and stood in the corridor, breathing slowly. His communicator buzzed. A message from an address he didn't recognize in a script he couldn't read. He forwarded it to Velhari. 15 minutes later, she sent back a translation. "It is from the Kelhari Council of Researchers," her message read. "They are writing to say they heard what you did. They want to know if you are well. It is a formal wellness inquiry, which in our culture is reserved for those who have taken a significant personal risk on behalf of another. They are asking because they want to know whether to be grateful or worried." Danny typed back, "Tell them I'm fine. Tell them the noodles were really bad, though." A pause, then, "I will deliver the message faithfully. They will find this very funny. Velhari humor is rooted in unexpected honesty." Another pause, then, "So is mine." He put the communicator in his pocket and walked back toward Deck 7. The dying star outside the viewport filled the corridor windows with amber light, and for a moment the whole hallway looked like it was made of something warm. Luwen fell into step beside him. "Harmon talked to you." "Yeah." "You in trouble?" "No, apparently I'm famous." She thought about that. "Is that better?" "I have no idea," he said honestly. She nodded. "Sounds about right." She held out her water bottle. "Hold my beer metaphorically. I don't actually have beer." "Nobody has beer. This is a deep space research station." "Somebody has beer. Dale has beer. Dale always has something. By the time they reached Deck 7, 3 more messages had come in. One from a Velhari senior researcher Danny had never met, one from a Tharkin communications officer, and one from a human journalist who had apparently picked up the footage through the Coalition network and wanted a statement. Danny deleted the journalist's message, replied to the Tharkin officer with a polite greeting he had to ask Velhari to help him format correctly, and read the senior researcher's message twice. It said, "You are the first human in 40 years of this station's operation to sit on the floor." He wasn't sure if that was a compliment or an indictment of the previous 40 years. He suspected it was both. That evening, Velhari found him in the observation bay, looking at the star. She stood beside him, not close enough to intrude, but close enough that she was clearly choosing to be there. They didn't speak for a while. Then she said, "My people have a phrase. It translates roughly as, 'The one who sits with you in the dirt is worth more than 10 who stand and watch.'" Danny looked at the star. "That's a good phrase." "We have many good phrases," she said. "We also have many bad ones. The ratio is similar to humans, I think." "Probably." She turned to look at him directly, which he had learned was another significant gesture. Velhari eye contact was offered, not default. "I want to ask you something. You do not have to answer." "Okay. Why did you sit down?" He thought about it, because it seemed wrong to do anything else. She held that for a moment, turning it over. Then she pressed 2 fingers to her chest again, the same gesture from the cafeteria. "Yes," she said, "that is the right kind of reason." The star pulsed outside, red and slow, counting down something that had been counting down for 1,000 years. The station drifted. Inside it, 32 species went about the business of sharing a small space in an enormous universe, and 2 of them stood in an observation bay and said nothing else because nothing else was needed. Cole filed a second complaint on the morning of day 51. This one had 7 signatures. Danny found out from Dale, who had a habit of knowing things before they were officially known, a talent developed over 15 years in the military, and honed to a fine edge by 6 weeks on the most politically complicated station in the Outer Rim. 7 names, Dale said, pulling up the document on his datapad and sliding it across the table. Cole, 4 from his bunk unit and 2 from the logistics division. Danny read it. "They're claiming I've formed an unauthorized political coalition with non-human personnel." "Yes. I had lunch with someone." "You had lunch with someone 18 million people watched." "I keep forgetting about that number." "Don't forget about it," Dale said. "It's the most useful thing you have right now." Danny slid the datapad back. Outside the porthole, a supply shuttle was docking at the lower ring, its engines cutting through the silence with a low vibration that traveled through the walls. The station was always full of small sounds like that, metal and movement, living and mechanical noise layered together. "What does Harmon say?" "She's forwarded it to the Coalition Oversight Board." "Which means it goes to all 32 species representatives, and any one of them can review it." Danny rubbed the back of his neck. Cole did not think this through. Cole is operating on pride, not logic. Pride doesn't think far ahead. Velhari appeared in the corridor doorway. She was carrying a navigation report and a second datapad tucked under her arm, and she had the look of someone who was moving with purpose and had 15 things she needed to do before midday. She saw Danny's face and stopped. "What happened?" "Second complaint," he said. She set both datapads on the table without a word and pulled out a chair. "Tell me." He told her. She listened in the way Velhari listened, completely still, her amber eyes focused, her hands flat on the table. When he finished, she was quiet for 4 seconds. He had started to count her silences because they always meant something. 7 signatures, she said. 7. Then we need 8. Danny looked at her. 8 what? 8 responses, counter-signatures, statements of support. My people use a formal response system in political disputes. You match the number of the opposing party and then exceed it. It communicates that the complaint does not represent a majority. She looked at Dale. Humans have something similar. Petitions, Dale said. Yes, we need a petition. She stood up. I will contact the Velhari Research Council. They will sign immediately. I will also contact the Tharkin Communications team, who owe me 3 favors from the navigational translation work, and the Selari Diplomatic Office, who have been wanting an excuse to put something formal on record about treatment of non-human staff for 2 months. Danny stared at her. You know the Selari Diplomatic Office. I know everyone who has been uncomfortable for a long time and has been waiting for a reason to say so. She picked up her datapads. I will be back in 2 hours. Do not do anything alarming. She left. Dale watched the empty doorway. I like her. Everyone likes her, Danny said. Cole doesn't. Cole doesn't like anything that makes him feel small. Unfortunately for Cole, he is small. The 2 hours came and went. Danny ran diagnostics, wrote a maintenance report, and ate a nutrition bar that tasted like compressed cardboard. Luan stopped by, heard the situation, and immediately asked who she needed to talk to and what she needed to say, which was Luan's standard response to most problems. Velhari returned in 1 hour and 50 minutes with a document that now had 23 signatures, 7 species, 3 divisions, 2 senior researchers and a Tharkin commander who had included a formal statement of his own, an additional 3 paragraphs explaining that Cole's behavior was a pattern, not an incident, and that the station's non-human personnel had been documenting concerns for over 2 years. Danny read the Tharkin commander's statement twice. He's been documenting this for 2 years. They all have, Velhari said. They documented, they filed notes. They waited for the appropriate channels. She looked at him steadily. You sat on the floor and it went to 18 million people in 6 hours. Do you understand now why they are responding? He did. He sat with it for a moment, feeling the weight of it, all those filed notes and long waits and appropriate channels going nowhere. I didn't know. I know you didn't know, she said, and there was no accusation in it. Most humans on this station don't know, not because they are cruel, because they aren't looking. You looked. Luan came back with coffee and found the 3 of them bent over the document together. She pulled up a chair without being asked. What are we doing? Building something, Dale said. She nodded, okay. Where do I sign? The petition went to the Coalition Oversight Board at 1400 hours, station time. By 1700, the board had convened an emergency session. By 1900, Cole had been called in for a formal hearing, and the 7 co-signers of his complaint had been notified that counter-evidence was being reviewed. Danny was not at the hearing. He was in the observation bay again, which had become something like a thinking spot for him, the way certain places become yours without you planning it. Velhari found him there at 2100. The hearing is concluded, she said. What happened? Cole received a formal censure. 2 of his co-signers were cited for previous incidents the board was already aware of. The Tharkin commander's statement has been entered into the official station record. She paused. And the Coalition Oversight Board has requested a meeting with you tomorrow morning. Danny turned to look at her. With me. With you, they want to discuss what they are calling a framework for interspecies workplace conduct. They believe your actions represent a model they want to examine. She tilted her head slightly. You sat on the floor, Danny, and now you are being asked to help build a framework. That's a lot of pressure for a noodle lunch. Yes, she agreed, but you are the one who sat down. He was quiet for a moment. Will you be at the meeting? I was asked to attend as a witness and resource. I said yes. She paused. I also brought the navigational translation report you asked for, the Kareth Field Emission Follow-up. It is not related to any of this. I thought you might want something ordinary to focus on. She held it out. He took it. Thank you, he said. You are kept, she said, which he had figured out by now was the Velhari equivalent of you're welcome, and also approximately 100 other things, all of them meaning something like I count you. Outside, the dying star held its position, patient and enormous, burning through the last of itself with complete commitment to the process. It had been doing this for 10,000 years. It would keep doing it until there was nothing left. Danny thought there was something instructive in that. He wasn't sure what exactly, but he thought there was something. The meeting with the Coalition Oversight Board was at 800 on day 53. The boardroom was large enough to make humans feel appropriately small, which Danny suspected was intentional. The table was circular, the chairs designed for bodies of 6 different configurations, and the walls were lined with the flags and seals of all 32 member species. The dying star sat in the viewport behind the board's primary chair like a painting of something ending. 7 board members were present, 2 humans, 1 Velhari, 2 Tharkin, 1 Selari, 1 creature Danny didn't recognize that appeared to be made almost entirely of layered membranes and communicated through a translation device clipped to the table in front of it. He sat down and folded his hands and tried to look like someone who sat in boardrooms. Velhari sat 2 seats to his right, straight-backed and professional, her datapad open in front of her. She did not look at him, but he knew she was aware of exactly where he was. The board chair was a Tharkin woman named Vorsalathi, older by the silvering at her collar joints. She opened without preamble. Corporal Holt. This board has reviewed the footage of the incident on day 44, the petition submitted on day 51, and the testimonies provided by 23 individuals across 7 species. We have also reviewed a file that Commander Tareth of the Tharkin Communications Division submitted, which documents 97 incidents of discriminatory conduct toward non-human station personnel over the past 26 months. Danny had not known there were 97. He kept his face neutral. You are not on trial, Vorsalathi continued. This meeting is not a hearing. You are here because something you did, apparently without planning or political intention, produced an effect that 26 months of formal complaints did not. He waited. Why, she said, do you think that is? He thought for a moment. He thought about the right kind of answer, the diplomatic one, the careful one. Then he thought about what Velhari had said about unexpected honesty. Because people watched it, he said. The formal complaints were recorded and filed and processed. The footage was just a person doing a thing, and people could see it. I think a lot of people already knew what was happening here. They just needed to see one person act like it was unacceptable before they felt like they could do the same. Vorsalathi studied him. And you believe you are suited to help design a framework for interspecies conduct standards? No, he said. A small pause around the table. I'm a corporal who fixes atmospheric regulators and is very bad at political maneuvering, he said. I'm not suited to design anything, but I have spent 53 days on this station, and I eat in the cafeteria every day, and I talk to people in the corridors. I know what it feels like when something is wrong in a room. That's not the same as knowing how to fix it institutionally. Vorsalathi made a sound that might have been approval. Then, what would you suggest? Ask the people who have been documenting it for 2 years, he said. They already know what the problems are. Commander Tareth's file has 97 incidents. Each one of those is probably a person who has a clear idea of what would have helped. Ask them. He glanced at Velhari without planning to. She was looking at her datapad, but the line of her shoulders had changed, the slight relaxation he had learned to read as something close to relief. The board spent the next hour asking him questions, most of which he answered with versions of I don't know, but I know who to ask. The 2 human board members looked alternately proud and uncomfortable, which seemed about right to Danny. He didn't know what Cole's 2 human supporters would make of this meeting. He suspected they would make it worse before it got better. But the membrane creature spoke near the end of the session, and its translation device rendered its words in a flat, precise English. The corporal understands one important thing. He understands that watching is not enough. The accumulated watching has produced nothing for 26 months. The difference between the corporal's action and the watching is that the corporal moved. This board should consider how to make it easier to move. The room was very quiet after that. Vorsalathy closed the session at 9:30 and asked Danny to remain available for further consultation. He said he would. She looked at him for a moment, studying him the way people study things they're trying to categorize. "You are younger than I expected," she finally said. "I get that a lot," Danny said. "It is not a criticism," she said. "Sometimes the one who moves is young. This is not surprising. The young have not yet learned to stop." He thought about that in the corridor afterward, standing beside Velhari while the station moved around them. "That was well done," she said. "I just answered questions." "You answered them honestly. You told them you were not suited to lead the framework. That was the correct thing to say because it was true and because it meant they will trust you when you contribute to it." She looked at him sideways. "You should contribute to it." "I thought I said I wasn't suited." "You are not suited to lead it. You are suited to contribute to it. These are different things." She closed her datapad and tucked it under her arm. "I am submitting my formal recommendation to the board today. I am recommending that the framework be led by Commander Tarath, with input from a cross-species working group that includes, if he is willing, a human enlisted perspective." Danny understood. "You want me in the working group." "I think the board wants you in the working group. I think Commander Tarath wants you in the working group. I think the Selari Diplomatic Office wants you in the working group." She paused. "I also want you in the working group, but I am trying to present a range of perspectives." He laughed. She made the sound that was close to one. That evening, Cole sent a message to Danny's personal communicator. It was 3 lines formal, and it said that Cole had received his censure and understood that the board had ruled. It did not apologize. It did not explain. It simply acknowledged the situation. Danny read it twice, and then put his communicator away. Luwen, who had materialized beside him because Luwen always materialized at relevant moments, said, "What did it say?" "That he knows he lost." "Is that enough?" Danny thought about the 97 incidents. He thought about Velhari on her knees on the cafeteria floor, eating her meal with that practiced nothing face. He thought about 2 years of filed reports going nowhere. "No," he said, "it's not enough, but it's a start." Luwen nodded. "Good. I hate it when people pretend a start is a finish." "Yeah." She punched him lightly on the shoulder. "Working group, huh?" "Apparently." "I want in." "I'll ask." "Don't ask, tell them I'm in. I've been on this station 53 days and I have opinions." She turned and walked away. "Tell Velhari," I said, "she was right about the signal frequency." "What signal frequency?" "She'll know." He stood there for a moment in the corridor, listening to the station breathe around him, the hum of machinery and filtered air and 32 species going about their lives in a small metal world at the edge of a dying star. Something had shifted. Not everything, not even most things, but something. He went to find Velhari to tell her Luwen's message about the signal frequency, and also because there was a navigation report he wanted to look at, and also because some people you keep. The working group held its first meeting on day 60. The room was smaller than the boardroom, which felt right. It had a round table that seated 12, and 11 chairs were filled. Commander Tarath, 2 other Tharkan officers, a Velhari senior researcher named Kureth who made Velhari seem positively casual by comparison, a Selari liaison named something Danny's vocal anatomy couldn't manage so she went by Sel, 2 human officers from the logistics division who had signed Velhari's counterpetition, Luwen, Dale, Velhari, and Danny. The 12th chair stayed empty. Commander Tarath explained that it was a Tharkan custom. One empty chair at any working group to represent the people who weren't in the room yet. Danny thought that was one of the better ideas he had heard in a long time. They spent 3 hours on the first session. Commander Tareth walked through the 97 incidents, not all of them, but enough to establish the shape of the problem. Some were large, obvious acts of contempt. Some were so small they could have been accidents, except that patterns are not accidents. Velhari sat beside Danny and quietly annotated her own notes, adding context and history to each incident in a running side commentary she shared only with him. One incident from month 4 of the station's operation, she wrote, was the first time she had considered requesting a transfer. He wrote back, "What stopped you?" She thought for a moment, then wrote, "The navigational data, the Kareth system emissions. I had not finished the work." He looked at her. She looked at the table. He wrote, "I'm glad you stayed." She pressed 2 fingers briefly to her chest under the table, where only he could see it. The working group left the first meeting with 4 agreed principles and an action list 47 items long. It was the kind of meeting that felt simultaneously like nothing had been accomplished and like the ground had shifted. Tareth said this was a reliable indicator that the meeting had been productive. Over the following weeks, the working group met twice more. The action list shrank. New items appeared. The framework was beginning to take shape, not as a set of rules exactly, but as a set of practices, things you do, ways of being in a space with someone different from you. Small, specific, real. Danny contributed what he could. He was not a political thinker or a diplomat. He was a corporal who fixed things, but he found that he understood, better than some of the people in the room, what it felt like in the corridors and the cafeteria and the day-to-day of the station. He could speak to that. On day 71, Cole requested to meet with Danny privately. Danny agreed, and they sat in a small crew lounge on Deck 4 that was usually empty between 700 and 900. Cole looked like someone who had been thinking for 3 weeks. His usual confidence had shifted into something quieter and less comfortable. "I'm not good at this," Cole started. "At what?" "Saying that I got something wrong." Danny waited. "What I did was unnecessary," Cole said. He was choosing each word carefully, like he was stepping across a river on slippery stones. "I don't know why I did it. I know what I told myself at the time. I told myself she was being presumptuous, standing there like she had every right to the food line, like the hierarchy didn't exist." He stopped, "Which is a terrible reason. I know that." "What hierarchy?" Danny asked. Cole was quiet. "There's no hierarchy here," Danny said. "This is a coalition station. She's a researcher, you're a soldier. Both of those are jobs. Neither one outranks the other by species." "I know." "Did you know it then?" Cole took a long time. "I thought I did." "What changed?" Cole looked at the window, the footage, not because people saw it, because I saw myself in it, doing it. He pressed his lips together. I looked like exactly what I didn't want to be. Danny considered him. "What do you want to be?" Cole didn't answer right away. When he did, it was quiet, better than that. It was not a complete story. It was not a transformation or a revelation. People didn't usually flip in a single moment, and Danny didn't expect them to. But the conversation was real, and Cole had asked for it, and that was something. "The working group," Danny said. "We're building a conduct framework. We're not looking for people who have been perfect. We're looking for people who understand the problem from the inside." Cole looked at him. "You're not offering me a seat." "I'm saying the door is not locked," Danny said. "That's different from a seat." Cole nodded once and stood up. He put out his hand. Danny shook it. They parted in the corridor and went in different directions, and Danny had no idea what Cole would do next. He figured that was about right. You can open a door. You can't make someone walk through it. On day 78, the working group submitted its first formal framework document to the Coalition Oversight Board. The document was 31 pages long, written in a language that all 32 member species had agreed to accept as a working reference. It covered physical space, communication customs, recognition practices, meal and rest area protocols, and a reporting structure that was faster and more transparent than the one that had spent 2 years filing things in a drawer. The board accepted it. The implementation would take time. Things always took time. Danny was realistic about that. But the document existed, and it had 11 names on it, and 11 species had contributed to it, and the empty chair had been accounted for by leaving a line in the introduction that read, "This framework will be updated as the people it serves continue to speak." That had been Velhari's suggestion. On day 82, Danny's transfer orders came through. His posting was rotating to a new assignment, a garrison station on the far side of the Karath system, 40 hours by shuttle. He told Velhari in the observation bay. She was quiet for a while. "How long is the posting?" she asked. 8 months. "Then you will return." Probably, she said, considering the word. "That is a human word for yes unless the universe intervenes. My people have the same word. It is used honestly." "Then probably," he said. She was quiet again. Outside, the dying star burned at its patient, enormous rate. It had billions of tons of fuel left to spend. It would not be done for a long time. "I want to tell you something," Velhari said. "Okay." On day 44, when that man took my tray and put it on the floor, I had already decided that I would not transfer. I had made the choice to stay, and I had accepted that the cost of staying was carrying certain things quietly. She looked at him. I had become very good at carrying things quietly. He didn't say anything. "When you sat down," she said, "I did not know whether to trust it. I thought perhaps it was a gesture that would end when the meal ended. I thought you would get up and walk away and I would go back to carrying what I had been carrying." She paused. "You did not. And then Luan sat down, and Dale, and I understood that it was not a gesture, it was a fact." She pressed 2 fingers to the center of her chest, and she held them there this time rather than touching and removing, held them still. "You changed the weight of something," she said. "That is not a small thing, Danny. That is the largest kind of thing." He didn't have words for it. He didn't try to find any. They stood in the observation bay while the star burned. The station breathed. Somewhere on deck 7, Luan was probably arguing with someone about signal frequency. Dale was probably reading. The membrane creature from the boardroom was probably translating something important that no one else could hear yet. The working group's framework sat in 31 pages in the Coalition database, waiting to be used. The empty chair sat at the table in its room, waiting for the people who weren't in the room yet. Danny would leave in 6 days. He would cross the Karath system and do 8 months of work and come back, probably. The universe would do what it chose to do in the meantime, as it always did. But something had been built here that had not existed before. Not a monument, not a legacy. Just a document and a practice, and a group of 11 people who had sat in a room twice a week and taken 97 incidents apart carefully, like pulling something broken down to its smallest pieces to understand what it had once been meant to be. And before all of that, before the board and the working group and the 31 pages and the formal censures and the counter-petition and the 18 million viewers and the 5 commendations and the Tharkin commander's statement, there had been a man who sat down on a cafeteria floor. He had not planned it. He had not known it would matter. He had looked at something that was wrong and moved toward it because it seemed like the only thing a person could reasonably do. That, Velhari had said once, was the right kind of reason. He believed her. On the morning of day 88, Danny Holt boarded the shuttle at docking ring 3 with his kit bag and a navigation report he had borrowed from Velhari and kept forgetting to return. Luan was there to see him off, and Dale, and 3 members of the working group who had come to say goodbye in their respective species forms, each of which was different and each of which meant the same thing. Velhari was last. She stood at the edge of the dock while the shuttle's engine warmed up behind him, and she looked at him with those amber eyes that caught light like something permanent. She pressed 2 fingers to her chest. He pressed 2 fingers to his own. He did not know if he was doing it correctly. He suspected it didn't matter. He turned and walked up the ramp, and the shuttle door sealed behind him, and the Kareth system waited outside the viewport, enormous and cold and full of things not yet understood. He pressed his forehead briefly against the glass and looked back at the station growing smaller as they moved away, small and bright against the dying star. 32 species going about the work of sharing a small world in a large universe. He thought, I will come back. He thought something is different than it was. He thought it is not fixed, it is not finished, but it is different, and different is what comes before better, and better is worth the work. The shuttle moved on. Behind it, the station held its orbit, patient and imperfect, carrying 11 names and 1 empty chair and 31 pages of something that had started on a cafeteria floor with a man and a tray of bad noodles, and a choice about whether to stand up or to sit down. The dying star burned on. It would be burning for a long time yet.